to talk about 10 great games for couples.
We have some differing opinions on the matter, so we'll be doing 5 games each. But these are just generally games that we enjoy and enjoy playing against each other or with each other.
So my number 5 is Stardew Valley, the board game. I already have talked about it before, but it's a great co-op game that plays from 1 to 4 players. So as the title says, it's based on the video game Stardew Valley. You will be trying to complete goals with your partner by collecting resources across a map. And you are limited by time because as soon as the year ends, then either you have lost or you have won. So the thing is, it scales based on the player count. So I think at 2 players, it's probably the best player count in my opinion. I think at 4 players, it gets way too difficult because there are goals like catching legendary fish, and it means you need to catch 4 because you're 4 players. Or like reaching the end of the mine, each time you want to spend like staircase, you have to spend 4 stones, which is very expensive. So I think at 2 players, it's the perfect count and it's very fun. It's beautiful, very stressful. And yeah, I think it's one of the only co-op games Sam likes, so I think it's pretty good.
My number 5 game is Butterfly, and what a brilliantly simple game. It's so easy to learn and teach. You're each controlling the same hedgehog, and you take it in turns to move around a group of tiles and collect points. Some tiles give you flat points, some are multiplication, some of them are negative. You can move as far as you want in any direction except for behind you, and as the tiles start disappearing off the board, your options slowly dry up. This game really shines at 2 players because it becomes extremely mean. With enough forward planning, you can start making your opponent take negative points and just be extremely cutthroat in general. You can also play this game at higher player counts, and it's very different gameplay. It's very chaotic, there's a lot of king making going on. Maybe someone constantly screws with the person in front of them. It lets the other people have a big advantage. But at 2 players, you don't have to worry about any of that. The fact that that sort of gameplay is disguised under such a cute theme is awesome.
Very misleading. You're gonna be like, you wanna play a cute game with me, and then you're just gonna wreck them. My number 4 is Fog of Love, a 2-player game where you are role-playing as a member of a couple. A relationship, basically. You can be wife-wife, husband-husband, wife-husband, anything you want. And basically, you have private goals, and you're gonna try to accomplish them by doing certain actions and completing certain events, as you would like some stats to go up or down on the command board. Maybe based on your goal, you would be trying to completely sabotage your relationship with your partner in front of you, while they are trying to do everything to salvage it, and it's very, very funny. Obviously, it's not something you would take very seriously, I'm gonna roleplay as myself and I really want to get married to him or something. You could be but don't look at me like that. You could be 2 really dodgy crooks, and that's what's very funny about it. I really enjoyed the role playing. The events are funny. It's great all around.
My number 4 is Ark Nova. Generally, I prefer simple games, and this is far from a simple game. If you want to fully get a grasp on the rules, it'll probably take about an hour to learn everything. And even then, it'll take 2 or 3 plays before you fully understand everything. But I think that's definitely worth the investment. This is such a great game. The basic premise is you're building your own zoo, so you have to start by building enclosures that you can fit animals in. Then you draw animal cards into your hands and you play them into your enclosures. This gives you both points and more income in order to play more animals in the future. You also have these long-term conservation projects that you're working towards. Like, for example, having 5 birds in your zoo. If you complete that before everyone else, you get a lot of points. The gameplay is so varied, it feels like there are many different paths to victory. You can build a ton of small animals, or you can focus on a few big, large animals. Or you can get a ton of different sponsors at your zoo and get points that way. The game feels like it rewards you for making combos, and it makes the gameplay very fresh and exciting. This game is great at all player counts. It's great at 4 players, 3 players, even solo. But I think it's best at 2 players. 2 players gives you the same experience while keeping the game time down. But I also like that it's easier to plan around only 1 player instead of having 2 or 3 other players messing up your plans. I like the dynamic with how the breaks are triggered. In 2 players, you only need to advance the break 9 spaces. That's the card's action for each player and then a 5 sponsor action. And at 2 players, the game feels a lot less luck-based. You're more likely to be able to snap up a card you see in the display. There's less chance of you missing out on a university you need. The game's still a bit on the longer side compared to everything else on this list, but well worth it.
My number 3 is Noctiluca. I think it's a game that's probably a bit less well known than all the other games, but think of it like a mixture of Potion Explosion and Sagrada. On your turn, you'll have pawns and you'll claim a line on the board, and you're gonna set the value of dice you want to pick up. And with these dice, you will fulfill little goals. Basically, you will complete jars, a bit like you complete your potions in Potion Explosion. So you're gonna put the dice with the corresponding colors on the corresponding spots. The game only lasts for 2 rounds, so I think it's better at 2 players because the first player will be first pick, obviously, on first round, and then it'll be second pick on second round. If you were to play in 4 players, for example, you will have, for example, the second pick in first round will be third pick in second round, so it'll never be first pick ever, which I think it's a bit unbalanced. Well, it's my opinion, obviously. It probably has been playtested so many times, but I think it's very frustrating if you're not first pick ever, in my opinion, because the board is limited by the dice available, and if the best choice ever has been picked already and you can't do anything about it. And I think the game is really fun. When you complete your jars, you get to pick up tokens, a bit like JPAR, but the opposite. The top tokens will be worth less and the ones at the bottom will be worth more. You also have a secret goal, like in Sagrada. You want to complete specific colors because you score points based on these colors. And yeah, it's a very beautiful game to look at.
My number 3 game is Azul. I'm sure most people are familiar with the gameplay, but you're basically just drafting tiles to fill up your board and score points. You get rewarded for completing rows, columns, or even all the same color. This game is again great at all player counts, 4 players, 3 players, but I think it was designed for 2 players. There are 100 different tiles that you're going to draft, 20 of each colour. You see 20 each round. The game will generally last for 5 rounds, so it means you see every tile exactly once, no reshuffling. If you see a lot of one of the colours early, you'll know that there won't be many coming up in later rounds. This is different to 4 players, where if you see a lot of one colour early, you're more likely to see more of it later when it gets reshuffled back into the bag. But overall, Azul is really easy to teach. I like games with simple rules, but it has very deep and complex gameplay, especially at 2 players. At 2 players, there can also be a lot of meanness, a lot of hate drafting, a lot of forcing your opponent to discard tiles, which can be great for some couples, and it can be really bad for some couples, so beware. We own the Azul Master Chocolatier. The tiles are delicious. If anyone has any replacements, please let us know. We need some extra black tiles.
My number 2 is Honeybuzz, probably one of my favorite games that I don't own. Honeybuzz is a 1 to 4 player worker placement / tile placement / engine builder game. On your turn, you will be drafting tiles by deploying workers on specific locations. The way you draft tiles is very interesting in my opinion. The first location will cost only 1 worker bee. But then if you want to go to this location again, you'll have to pay plus 1 bee, so 2 worker bees. And then if you want another tile here, you'll have to place 3 worker bees, and so on. Once you add that tile to your hive, you will try to make empty hexes and do all the actions around these. You can have actions like getting more worker bees, or getting points, or foraging resources like nectar. The thing I like more at 2 players is that in the center of the board you have objectives, but some of them are races, and if you're in 2 players, the first person that fulfills it gets 20 points, but the second person gets nothing, which is very satisfying. And lastly, just like Azul, the nectar looks delicious. I wish I could touch it. It looks so good. It would be one of the good reasons to get the deluxe edition.
My game number 2 is King Domino. Again, very simple game. You have your kingdom in the center of your board, you're drafting 2x1 tiles, you place them in your kingdom, and you try to connect up the same colors like in dominoes. I think a lot of people consider this game kind of average because they played it 4 players, and I kind of agree with them. I mean, at 4 players, basically you draft one tile and you're already at the edge of your kingdom. You don't have a lot of time to really build up your multipliers, you don't get to draft that many tiles. Positioning is way less important. But at 2 players, if you're playing with a 7x7 kingdom, it solves a lot of these problems. Now your tile placement really does matter, because it's very easy to block off large groups. You still see 4 tiles every round, but you get to draft 2 of them instead of 1. That means you get to draft combinations of things, like you might be able to draft 2 forest tiles in the same round. It also means you're less likely to have scenarios where there are the 3 water tiles you need in the same round and you only get to have 1 of them. At least here you can get 2. And I would say normally the games are pretty close. You're going to see all the tiles, so as long as both players don't mess up their positioning, they're both going to score reasonably well. Like if you get all 6 mine tiles, you're going to score a lot of points. But in order to get them, you've probably given up 6 other very good tiles to your opponent. If you're both blocking each other and you only get 3 mine tiles each, it means neither of you will score that well from them. So it's very even. This is by far our most played 2-player game, and I highly recommend it.
My number 1 is Five Tribes. Five Tribes was one of the first medium-heavy games I've played. It's a 2 to 4 player game that revolves around the man-killer mechanics. So basically you take meeples and then you're gonna drop them off on the tiles along the way. In this game there's technically 5 tribes, so 5 different colored meeples. They do different powers. So when you pick up your meeples from a tile, you're gonna drop 1 on each tile where you're gonna do your travel, and then you have to pair the last colored meeple with the same color on the last tile, and then you'll do that action. So if you finish with a pair of red meeples, they're the assassins, and they will be able to kill off a meeple on the map surrounding this tile at a distance of 2, because you have 2 assassins. The goal is obviously to score the most points possible, but there's many ways to score points, like claiming tiles, getting resources, getting the favors of some gods. What's very interesting about the game is that at the beginning of a round, you'll do an auction to know who's going to be first pick, who's going to be second pick, who's going to be third pick, and so on. The thing is, in 2 players, you have 2 markers. So you can have 2 turns in a row if you manage to bid on the right thing. And because you bid with money, you don't really want to spend so much, but sometimes you really want to be first because there's a very good action you want to do on the board. In 4 players, I think the game, first of all, drags on a lot because there's always this thing of analysis paralysis. People are going to try to do the best move possible, and it takes a long time to see all the possible moves on the board. And also the board will have changed a lot by the time you come back. It comes back to your turn. In 2 players, obviously there's not that problem, because either there will be your opponent's turn and then your turn, or otherwise you have 2 turns in a row. So obviously if you have 2 turns in a row, you can set up good moves for yourself, which is very satisfying. While setup is a bit cumbersome, I think the game has such a beautiful table presence. Like, there's so many colors, all the meeples, all the cards around the board and stuff. It's beautiful, and it's always such a joy to actually set it up. Like, you put all the little meeples and stuff. Oh, I love it. So yeah, I think it's a great game and deserving of top 1.
My number 1 game is Bunny Kingdom, and this is probably a bit of a hot take because most people recommend the game at 3 players or 4 players, but I really love the game at 2 players. In Bunny Kingdom there's a shared map, and you draft cards that allow you to control territories on that map. You score points by making connected territories that produce resources and have castles. You can also draft cards that give you more castles or allow you to produce more resources, or you can draft private endgame goals for yourself that score points that way. I find the dynamic of 2 players much more interesting. In 3 or 4 players, it's like, draft the 2 best cards for you, move on. I think it's generally fairly obvious to know which 2 cards are best for you. You don't want to get in other people's way. And also, in like 4 players games, you get to see the 4th player's hand once and there's a choice of 4 cards for you. That's kind of lame. You could have missed out on the best 6 cards of the game and there's nothing you could have done about it. I think card drafting games work best at 2 players. In 2-player games, you only get to draft 1 card and you discard another card on your turn. That means you really have to think about the 1 card that you take. There could be 6 good options for you, but you only get 1, and then you're going to pass the hand to the opponent. So do you take 1 and discard 1? Do you leave all the good options so you get something back? You have hidden knowledge to yourself of which areas you discard, so maybe only you know that this specific area is out of the game but your opponent doesn't. And I think the best part about 2 players is, when you receive your hand of cards, you also draw an additional card. It gives you a sense of hope every time you get a new hand, even though there's never the card you want. But overall in Bunny Kingdom, it's really satisfying to build up your multipliers. Getting something like 15 castles and 6 resources, getting 90 points. That's a great feeling. But then also balancing that out with knowing which endgame goals to pick just makes for a great experience, and one that I love at 2 players. And it's another game that has a cute theme and killer gameplay. These were 10 of our favourite 2-player games, or couples games.
Let us know in the comments which 2-player games you like. And thank you for watching. Bye!